Hello, welcome to Flory Models. I'm Flory. Nightmare week this week, I suppose you could actually call it. I know every week seems to be a nightmare for me, but anyway, this particular one really was, and as you're going to see in the videos this week, you'll understand why. Really, it boils down to this little thing. Still, the Corsair. Now, I suppose one of the big things about this one, we talk about it, is many times you might build a model and everything else like that, you feel that, you know, it's going very, very well, and then something goes wrong, and then that way you put it in a box and then you forget about it for, you know, up to years on end, and it sits in there and never ever gets done, and you move on to your next project. And I suppose with this one, because of the work we're doing with it and various sort of different formats I'm doing it in and things like that, like putting in obviously all this resin into it, changing around the front end, cutting things open like we've done with the engine cowl and things like that, which is over here. You know, we've cut the engine cowl open now so we can have all the engines shown, and working my way through the actual build is obviously you're setting yourself up for a lot of trouble, because obviously a lot of things can go wrong. Some of it's trial and error, fitting and things like that. So it's all too easy to say, oh look, I've had enough of that one and put it away. Two things. One, obviously this is a commission, so can't do that. But secondly, it's one of those sort of nice gratifying things to think, right, okay, you know, I'm going to have this one and I'm going to make it right, even if it means, like this one has actually been resprayed now 3 times. It's been stripped back twice completely from being painted in the blue and everything, and had to get the lot off, which is a real messy job at the best of times. But it's happened twice now. This is sort of 3rd time lucky. So we're to this point now where it's covered in salt for the chipping and everything else, and she's sat here now, and I've done it so many times now I've actually run out of paint, which I know a lot of you find funny, because obviously I've got this rack behind me, you think I'd have for every colour tenfold, and then downstairs we've got the store as well, which is full of paint as well. But it just so happens I've used all the paint for this one, and there seems to be a bit of a run on the other one, so hopefully it'll be in today and I can get some more paint on this one, and I'm hoping by the end of the week to get this one out of the way, because the gear is all done for this now, everything's done. All we've got to do is get this painted, weathered up, and then really put it together, because the engine's done, the cowl's done, everything else, so it's literally just putting it all together. So I was saying, it's one of those ones where sometimes it's best to sort of, you know, let's just stick at it, you know, don't let it beat you. Or do the thing of like, okay, it hasn't worked. Think about the reasons why it hasn't worked. With me, I just went over the top, as you'll see in the video in a minute. But literally, then you can think to yourself, right, okay, well look, I can use this particular model, instead of just bunging it in a box and then wasting your money with it, you know, get it out and experiment with new things. So, you know, I used to do a lot of salt chipping years ago, and sort of moved away from it because I didn't like the overall effect. But doing something in deep blue like this one is, chipping really works. And when you're trying to do it, you know, with a brush or a pencil on blue, never really works that well. Works great on greys and things like that, and camo work, but when you're actually doing it on blues and that, I find, you know, pretty much nothing comes close to rock salt chipping. So anyway, that's that one. As I said, there's a video which is 40-minute video on what went wrong and how I put it right, and then it went wrong again, so I put it right. But anyway, so what it is, it's almost like a 40-minute outtake of the Corsair build, because obviously I've gone along and restarted it again, where it's like, okay, here we are in primer, pre-shaded, and then we've done obviously the yellow mottling work that looks like primer coming through, as well as metal chipping and everything else like that. So when you see the overall completed video, this sort of section will be an outtake of it. Obviously it's just for members only, but there'll be a clip of it in a moment that you'll see here on the new show. But the 40-minute one for the members will be up this week, so you can see that one. So really, you know, moral of the story is sometimes it's best just to work through it and keep going at it, and not give up too much. So that's the story with that one. And to be honest, I am still enjoying it. I know I've moaned about that kit from start to finish, and it's taken me a month longer than it should have done, but I am really enjoying it, and that's the main thing. The other one at the same time, got to be careful with this because it's still wet, is the old Phantom here. Now the Phantom, as I say, there again, this one has got a few variables in it. Obviously it's got a lit cockpit, we're taking chunks out of it here, we've got engines going to be revealed in the back and everything else, and we've got this spine work done with this refuelling, the same ones on the sides, and things like that. So obviously this one is another one which is a little bit more over the top than normal, doing a couple of different things with this one as well. So obviously this one's post shaded and everything else. There again, this one's extremely close to being finished. She's literally just ready to be deckled now obviously we can do the metallizer work on the end, and then I'm going to go around and obviously we'll do all the super detailing for the engine bays and all the other bits and pieces on top. So that one's coming together as well. Now the video for that is up as well, so you can watch that one as well. So you're going to be really spoilt this week because there's going to be over an hour's worth of video up on this. So this one's going to be covering, obviously, to this stage we're in now. I didn't go really too much through the priming, because you've seen me do primer work, and if you're watching this build, you're probably up to speed on it anyway. So this one's really covering where I've done this mottling effect, and you can see, and the post shading underneath and things like that. So that one's up. So next week hopefully will be a little bit of more of a home run, where Phantom will almost be done. Certainly the Corsair will be done next week and everything else like that. So that's those builds. So as I say, you're pretty much sport for that. And then obviously next week the Corsair one, which will hopefully just, you know, be a sidestep. You've watched where it went wrong, shows you how to do IPA, which is basically for getting all the acrylic paint off and it just peels off like skim. It's a great little technique, and that shows you that one. There's a little clip in a minute that will come up about spraying white as well, so you'll see those in a moment. So anyway, a couple of other bits we've got to go through as well. The egg plane SIG, which has gone absolutely massive. Let me move that because I think it's blinding you all. The egg plane SIG, which is, say, it's gone sort of ballistic, really. Amazing amount of people go through, and we have to blame Kevin McWilliams down in Perth because he got us all into this one. So anyway, he has also done a bit of a blinder here, and he's actually donating £150, that's pounds, to first, second and third place. So it'd be £50 each for that. This is purely off his own back. So what he said is he would send me the money. Very generous of you. So anyway, but what we'll do is, it won't just be Pro Models, Flory models stock, like we usually do with these things. It can be anything. So if you want to buy anything from the store whatsoever, or if you want me to get you a kit in or something like that, then just shout for the winners and we can do it like that. So don't think it's just on Pro Modelers stock, where obviously I make a bit of money. This will be on anything at all in there. So it can be kits, wires, paints, tools, everything else that's actually in the Flory model store. So that will be the prizes for that one. So a massive, massive big thank you to it. Very, very kind and very, very generous offer of doing that one. As we're on about those, I don't know if you all saw it last week. If not, it's below here anyway. But you've got the diorama group build, and it's absolutely stunning work by done by everybody in there. And I wanted you all to watch it, which I think quite a few of you have now. So anyway, first place was Dougie Hunter, and he did that Sturmoff one, which I have to say, and I will say it again, is that living out that window, there's a big thing around England called Dartmoor, and it's a huge moor and everything else, absolutely spectacular up there. And up there there's bogs and marshes and everything else, and me and the dog go up there a lot, okay? And that marsh work he's done is absolutely spot on, because it's just like that up there. So anyway, well done to him for that one. And the other one is something I've never seen anyone do before, was Stephen Sutcliffe did the bomb disposal in Iraq. And after watching a film recently as well all about that, absolutely fantastic. So if you haven't seen the videos and you want to have a look, obviously you've got all the photos in there and everything else like that. If members in the site, obviously you can see them on the forum, and then the group builds have now been put into their specific areas. So if you go to completed group builds, you'll see them, obviously the completed photos. But if you want to see how they've been done, a lot of the members did put links on back to the builds that they did. If not, if you're looking for those type of ones, just look in the actual land gallery for the land builds page, and you'll find them in there. Or just do the search and you'll come up and see exactly how they did all those. So well done to everyone who did those. The other thing as well, this week I was hoping to have quite a large delivery in and do my first look in box review, but here we are now at 12 o'clock on Friday, it's midday, and it hasn't turned up yet, and I can't really wait any longer. And I know a couple of you guys have got things on orders in there, such as lightnings and MIGs and whatnot. It's in that order, so it's not going to be added, probably get it out today, so I have to book the courier by 2 o'clock, and I can't imagine it turning up anytime soon. So unfortunately your orders will go out on Monday. So if it does turn up today, then obviously I'll get them out to you on courier for next day on Monday. So just normal orders, because there's a couple of little bits and pieces other members have ordered as well. So they will all go out, but say we're just waiting for the delivery. It should have been here beginning of the week, and it's been held up, but I have checked the tracking and it is here today. So at some point it will be in, so well done for that. So it has made us a little bit short this week. So to make up for it, we've got the first one here, which is really about this Phantom and spraying white, because I know a lot of people have said to me in the past and recently about spraying white, you know, doing hundreds of coats of it, and I always think, well, I don't do that, I do it in 2 coats and it's done. Okay, so here's a quick video on that. Okay, so I get a lot of people asking about spraying white, and they find it quite difficult to get it go on. Now the trouble with white is, by its nature, it's quite translucent So it's very hard to cover dark areas. So when we got pre-shading and things like that, it's quite a hard cover, colour to get a nice even cover all over it without having to do hundreds and hundreds of layers. So obviously you could just build up layers, let it dry, move on everything else, but this is just a quick way I do it. My preferred paint for doing this is Tamiya's XF2 flat white. The reason for that is that I find it really easy to spray it. Some of the other ones, certainly things like Valero Model Air, extra acrylics, things like that, when you spray them, they're just too watery. You have to thin them to get them through your airbrush, but for some reason the good old Tamiya stuff does tend to work really well. And if you are new to airbrushing, I find it one of the easiest acrylic paints to work with. So what we've got here is our airbrush, and we're going to crank it up to maximum PSI. Okay, so whatever your airbrush will throw out. So we've just put in here literally a few drops of thinners, okay, and mainly a lot of paint. So the mix is probably only 10% thinners, if that, 5% thinners, something like that. So we'll just give this a bit of a mix up with a brush here in the colour cup, just like so. Okay, and it should be a really thick mix. Now the reason for making it thick is so when this goes on, it sticks, literally just sticks on. But obviously the drawback is when you're spraying very, very thick paint like this, obviously you're going to have the problem where you get like a sandpaper type finish. It's going to be very, very rough. And that's because the size of the particles this thing's throwing out are obviously a lot thicker, a lot heavier, and they're going to stick on. And because they're not watery, they're not going to blend into each other. So literally they're going to stick on top of each other, as I said, a little like sandpaper. So we just check our flow, make sure we are working. Okay, and then all we do, we'll bring it in a bit closer. So we're just going to start putting the coat over. You see it's quite speckly. You go right over and we just do a quick pass, 2 directions, just like so. Okay, and obviously the thing is I'm looking for is this pre-shading you can see coming through. Alright, so we just let that one dry to one side for a moment. Same on the other one. So just go back and forth. And as I said, immediately, because we're spraying very thick paint, I can show you up here, what you do get is build up, and you'll get this no matter what you're spraying, okay? So the camera locks in, you get a blob at the top, okay? That's why we got the spitty pattern, like that, is because of this blob up here, okay? So we just wipe that off. And that happens when you're spraying thick paint, okay? So it's clear now, so don't worry about it, we can go straight over that. You can always sand them out, but they will blend in. And all you do, a couple of passes, like that, and you'll be absolutely fine. Now, over on this one, you can see that bring it out a little bit, the pre-shading is coming back. And obviously, as it dries, the more it dries, the more the pre-shading comes back. So we just give this another pass over. Okay. Sprayed in. Now I'd be happy to leave that as is, so we'll just do the other one. I'll do a quick wipe again. Just take the end cap off. Okay. So we just spray up those. Okay, so that one's done as well now. Okay, and then what we're going to do is clean this down. All we're going to do now is come in and we'll pour a bit of this back in because we're not going to need all of this. Okay, so we pour most of it back in the colour cup. Take in more thinners, and what we're going to do now is more of a 50-50 mix. And then because this is wetter, what will happen is it will fill in a lot of the texture. Okay, so what you could do is wait a little while and then sand it down with a very, very fine gloss to give you a gloss finish, but this will give you equally just as well. And then if you're going to come along, and obviously for decaling purposes after this, I'm going to go over it with a clear gloss anyway. So we just let this blow through, okay, and then put the coat over, and you'll see it's very wet and shiny compared to the others we're going on drying very, very quickly. We'll just leave that to one side. We bring you in again, okay, just like this, and then literally, there we go. So we'll just stick that up there. So there you go, within the space of a few minutes, we've done this, completely painted it in literally 3 coats of white paint. We're done one after the other, so we're not having to let it dry for hours. Now, if you're using a very wet paint, say like something like the others, and not doing it as a thick mix, then certainly you'd have to wait a long time between coats drying. You might get the run marks, you get that staining effect, which is horrible, and everything else. So that really is just a really, really quick way of painting white. Okay, so the other one that I thought about showing you would be quite interesting was obviously some of the things that went wrong with this. As I said before, you know, obviously members, you can see this on the main site as well as the big video, but this will give you a rundown of exactly what went wrong and at the end of the day, how to get off and strip back to bare plastic really, really simply and safely. Okay, it's been dry now for around about an hour. Quite warm in here, so we can probably push on. So we've done a little bit down the back end, you can probably see down here. So same thing again. Dry brush, pretty much no one, and very light tapping movements as you go around. Okay, we don't want to be ripping the hell out of it. What we're trying to do is obviously get all the paintwork and everything to chip through. So this is version number 2, which is obviously a lot less chip than we had before. Okay, so obviously hopefully we're quite chippy up here. It's still a little bit wet, could do with a little bit more time. You can tell that because it sort of clumps up as you go. But really, there we go. So if we bring you in a little bit closer, you can see there's that wing done. So if we do up here on this fuselage side here, I'll brush these off. That's the top. So we've got a lot less, although it's quite heavily distressed. I think when it's had like a wash over this and the other things that we're going to do to it, it should give us a far more reserved weathering effect to what we had last time. Now obviously the texture of the paint here is very rough, so what you could do is go and literally run this under the tap, okay, but that's giving us this type of effect. Now obviously we can add to this if we wanted to and give it even more sort of chipping and things like that. Now the way you do that is wet the actual area itself and then stab it with a brush and you'll see it will peel off just like we've done around here. So we're just carrying on, going over these areas, and as I say, we can probably do with a little bit more sort of silver chipping down in here perhaps, which we can do by hand afterwards. It's not so much of a problem. So we're just going to lightly brush everywhere, and I'll see it's in there. Now we've done the underside, as you can see down in here. There's a lot less than what we had the first time, okay, and obviously we've done the sides and we've gone in the areas, so it's given us a nice weathered in look. Now the big thing that we're going to have to take care of is obviously when we come along to doing the, scrape these off, is that when we come along to do the actual, just take those down. There we go. When we come along to do the actual markings and insignia, there's a couple of little options you can do with this. Okay, you can either cut them up before you put them on to make it look like they're sort of had a bit of a hard life and a bit of a kick in and everything else like that. Or the other way of doing it, of course, what happens is that you can actually put them on and then chip them up. And by chipping them up, we're going to go in reverse. So we'll put, you know, literally cover the decal in stone chipping like we've done like this, and then spray over it, and then that way you get the same effect because obviously the silver will show through but the decal will show through instead, and that's one way of literally doing it, which is always a little bit of an odd one to do. So there we go, we just brush this down. So okay, a couple of things. First thing you'll notice, it's got some real rough, hard edges to this. Some of this is where the chipping is, and obviously some of it is where the salt is. but I think you agree that's a lot better to what we had last time. And if you want sort of extreme weathering to sort of, you know, bring them up, then this is the type of effect you go for. It's very, very simple doing stone chipping and everything else like that, but it's one of those things, a lot of people will look at this and go, oh my god, he's killed it, what a horrible thing, and everything else. Other people will go, I absolutely love it, and it is really, really personal. What you want to do is do it personal to you. The bit where you think, I think I've overdone it, just stop there, don't do any more to it, and then, you know, obviously you can go back like we did the first time, a little bit too much and we overdid it, so we went back, and obviously I thought, well look, the primer colour isn't really showing through there, so we're going to go back and do the primer colours and things. So to say, there is various things we can do on this to continue distressing it. One of them is to give it a sand, which is a little bit tricky here. If I just grab my sanding sponge. Okay, now this one here is obviously what we call like the miracle polishing for doing glass work and everything else. But there again, don't push too heavy down on this, otherwise what's going to happen is you're very, very quickly going to go through everything you've done. So very lightly, just give it a bit of a rub over. Okay, the areas where it's a little bit rough. And what it will do, it'll just take the top shininess of the paintwork off. Then if you wet your finger over it, you'll get a better idea of the effect you're getting. But there again, it will just dull it down just a little bit. But so this is going to have a coat of fuchsia and all those things afterwards. And obviously there's a lot of salt on here, so you're probably going to get these marks as well. So you see all this down here? This is salt water, okay? So there again, if you wet your finger, then you taste it, it will taste of salt. Okay, so you can literally just go along these areas and give them a rub over with a damp sponge, something. So I've got a normal sponge here that's dry. Just give it a rub over and it will help just lift up any bits. You can probably hear them on the sponge that are doing it, but it gives you a very nice effect around all the areas. So I'm just going to pop around everywhere and give this a bit of a rub down and get all these last little bits off, salt off, things like that. We'll have a check around it, and then at this point you can say, right, okay, I'm quite happy with how this all is, or perhaps, you know, there's a few little things I'm going to change. Perhaps like this bit down here is a little bit too much, and this here, you could respray them in. Pick a panel out and just respray it. Give you a good weathering effect. So there we go, that is my version of chipping. Okay, now sometimes, you know, you do some painting and everything else, and perhaps you're not happy with it, perhaps it's gotten wrong, or perhaps you just want to give your model a complete, you know, new relife, okay? Perhaps you want to respray it. Now obviously you could just sand down and go right over the top of it, but with this particular one, I've done a lot of salt weathering and stuff like that, so the thing is the chipping has actually got a texture, which is great as an effect, because obviously as in real life, it's actually chipped into the paintwork. Unfortunately, it's a nightmare to spray over it, because as soon as you spray over it, obviously those textures will show through, unless you're going to then do re-chipping over the top, it will cause all types of problems. Now I know a lot of people say about, you know, obviously how do you strip back paint and everything else, and how do you go about it, so I thought I'd do this one really on how I do it. Now I actually use this stuff. Now this is IPA, okay. Now this particular one is, just seeing what percentage alcohol this one is. Actually it doesn't say, but I think this one is a very high alcohol content on this particular one. But I bought a big one like this for £5 in the UK many years ago, and as you can see I've still got gallons of it to get through, so I keep that locked away in a filing cabinet. Health and safety, but I've got a little pot of it just here. Now the thing is with IPA, it won't attack your plastic. If you was to come along with cellulose thinners and things like that, it will attack your plastic and it will melt physically the plastic, and all the rivet lines and detailing and everything else you've got, you will lose instantly because it will just blend them in, okay? So this way, what we can actually do with the IPA, because it's not aggressive to the plastic, but it is to acrylic paint. Now this is also acrylic paint that I'm doing this with. This isn't enamels, because obviously enamels will be different things. You can use things like oven cleaners and things for them, but all we do, we brush it on absolutely everywhere for the moment, Okay, and we're just going to start to let it eat, and immediately it will start to melt through, and you might be able to see if we bring the camera in a bit closer here. You might be able to see that it's actually, where I did multi-layered painting and chipping, you'll see the top coat start to go immediately, which is obviously the blue in this case. Okay, a bit more on there. Showing through the underside, which was green, and then under that it's silver. So if you were doing this as an effect, just as a perhaps, you can actually use this as a weathering to actually bring it back even more, which is a little technique I do. So I cover it with IPA and take off coats of paint, and if you've done multi-level painting you get this type of effect, which was something I was trying to do, which quite frankly I overdid it a little bit. So what I'm going to do now is go around. Now the thing is, don't touch the paintwork, because if you do, you will stick your fingers in, because the paint goes extremely soft. Okay, so all we do, we give it a good old rub round to start with, and what this basically does is soften up the paintwork and gets it ready for the next step. Now there's two ways of doing it. Either you can just carry on with IPA, rinsing it all off, okay, until you get down, because obviously this has got primer, pre-shade, silver, this yellowy orange colour, for which was supposed to be the aircraft primer, and then obviously you're down then to the blue on top. Okay, so as you start to get through them all, you sort of scalp, but already I can feel it. You can hear like a cracking sound, and what that actually is because I'm down to plastic. So we just give that a rinse off. As soon as you get into the plastic, it comes off a lot easier because it peels off. Now what you can do, if you're very careful, take this over to the sink. And obviously I can't get the camera in there to show you this, but it's what I do. At this point, when I'm down to here and we've got plastic in, take it over to the sink. I'm running a pretty warm tap. We're not talking boiling hot because we don't want to melt the plastic, but we are talking probably you know, enough to scald you if you kept your hand under it too long. Put it under it, rinse it down, I rub it all off like this, and you're left with plastic. The only thing is, it does make a huge mess of your sink, so your partner might not be best happy with it. But it's an easier way to get it off than doing it this way. This way, it does work, it just takes a little bit longer. But as you can see, we are down in here, and you're thinking, oh, it's looking a right mess, but trust me guys, it will rinse through and be all okay. So we just come along a little bit more. And as I say, what I'll do in a moment, I'm just going to rinse this under the tap to rinse it off. Now as you rinse it off, give it a little bit more IPA over the top. Okay, and that'll help get it all off. But you'll notice the stuff where you've got over here and you're letting it soak in, sort of eats through and it peels off almost. You can actually rub it off with your fingers as well, which is quite a nice little touch. But I'm just going to fill up these gum bays. So literally we'll come across here, just down the back of these flaps and ailerons, and let it start eating its way in. Okay, we just flip it over. And we're just going to do the same with the other side, because what will happen is all this can get going and start eating its way through and softening up. Now as soon as you put water onto it, obviously it starts to go hard again. So it's a bit of a balancing act of actually washing off and everything else. Okay, so we just start, and as you can probably see just down here, it's actually peeling off. You can peel this off if you were quite clever and took your time with it. But it doesn't take much to get all this off, and as I say, you can use it as a type of weathering effect as well, which is something we'd cover in other shows. But this is really just to show you how I strip back my models. Okay, so if we just come back, what we do, there we go, it's really starting to go now. We're almost all off this entire area, and you say this one here has actually got a total of 4 coats of paint on it. It's got a primer, it's got a silver, it's got a orange coat, okay, and it's got the blue on top, and then after all of that I had a coat of clear as well. So it will eat through absolutely everything. If you're thinking, will it go through clear? Oh yeah. So what I'm going to do now is you literally just run this under the tap, give it a wipe off, and I'll bring it back and show you where we've got. Okay, so round one, we've got it to this stage. Okay, so what we do is just clean off the brush. So it's all pretty much water on here. So we just wipe some of this water off. Okay, back in with the old thinners, and you should notice second time round it comes off very easy because you've got rid of all the aggressive parts which are going to hold on to your paintwork, for want of a better word. And you should find it comes off. And say same thing, you can pop along with a tap. I won't, but I would normally go along off to the tap, run it under the tap, rinse it down. It's a lot cleaner, faster than doing it the way I'm really showing you here, but this way you get an idea of how I do it. Okay, plenty over, and then when you're doing wipe downs, say it's just normal kitchen roll, make sure you've got a nice wet cloth. It's covered in IPA because it will help it come off. Just like so, and then what you can do, just do your circular motions as you would, just to clean up. And the great thing is, it shouldn't, I'll say shouldn't, because I don't want anybody emailing me saying it ruined mine, but it shouldn't affect your plastics or anything like that. But there we go, that's easy paint stripping. Okay, so with the final wipe over, we are all done, and there we go, all sorted. So what we can do now, we can get on really and re-prime this one up and start all over again. A couple of things I have done, I have removed off the campy, and that's the beauty about using PVA glue. Little knife, cut it in there, got it out, because I wasn't too sure how clean it was on the inside, and I didn't want it to be in the position where we get to this point and we find out that actually the glasswork is still a little bit wrong. So that was the idea behind that, which is also quite good because the HUD glass moved at some point, so I can reset that and fix that. So what we're going to do now is leave that off to one side to totally dry off, clear all this rubbish away, and we can get some primer back on it. Okay, so I'm away this weekend with the Snap charity, doing a bit for them this week, so I hope you're having a nice time with that one. So I won't be getting on with too much building, but I certainly will be next week, and we hope to get some more great videos to you very, very soon. So until then, everyone, happy modelling. If you're in the UK, enjoy the weather, because it's gorgeous blue sunshine out there, and I'll see you next week.